Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2025 release Dead Male. It's a Shudder original. It's coming to Shudder on Friday, April 18th. So this is a no spoiler review. So I will say that usually when it's US made films that are Shudder originals, they're going to be to not great. I would say give this one a shot because for being as low budget as it appears to be, and I'm sure it is because it's a Shudder original, I think they pulled off something pretty interesting here. Now, I'm going to talk about the pluses and the minuses with this film, but I feel like overall, for me personally, I did enjoy the film. I didn't think it was like the greatest thing ever, but I do think it's worth supporting and checking out because there is some really cool stuff here. Anyway, let's get into it. Again, Dead Male. This one's written and directed by Joe DeBoer and Kyle McConaghy, who did a movie called BAB. Have not seen it, don't know anything about it. Quick synopsis of this one. So this is about a letter calling for help, basically. It takes place what appears to be in the 80s because synthesizers are a big thing, so that makes a whole lot of sense. So it takes place in the 80s, and this letter makes it to a post office where they can't figure out where it came from. So they give it to their guy who deals with dead mail that, they can't get to its destination for various reasons. And this guy is trying to do some research on that to try and figure out where did this piece of mail come from. Now, the thing is, there's a cry for help in this piece of mail, and there's blood on it. So it's this whole question of, like, what's going on? What was the origin of this? What's the backstory on it? And where are things going with this investigation? Now, I'm not going to give you anything further than that because if I go a little bit further, I'm going to ruin things about it, and I think it should just be experienced. I will say that in the beginning, I was a little bit like, are we really going anywhere? Because this feels kind of like awkward and weird, and I just don't know that this is going to go anywhere. But trust me, it definitely does, and I think it's worth it. It's quite interesting in my opinion. I like the concept a lot. This isn't one of those films where the story is amazing. It's more about the other things that come together to make this film kind of special. So let me get into those. Like I said, it immediately looks like a super low budget film. One of the reasons that is, too, is that they make it look like it's from the 80s. They intentionally make the film resolution look really bad. Now, personally, I don't think that was a great move because you don't really need to do that. I know it was more of like an artistic move. I think they wanted to be able to immerse people in the 1980s a little bit better and be like, yes, this is kind of what film from the 1980s would look like now. And I just don't think it's necessary because I think we could just have things look a lot better. I mean, it's easy to do that. And also it would have been a little bit less work to make it look so crappy. But still, it's not a deal breaker for me. It's just something that I'm breaking with the filmmakers on thinking that it wasn't a good idea when they thought it was a good idea, but minimal issue on that one. There are a lot of odd old digital, like sci-fi-ish sounding noises that are used within the score. And early on, I was kind of like, what is this about? I really don't understand this. But synthesizers do make a prominent appearance in this film, and that's kind of all I'm going to say about that. Because I don't want to give away too much, but then it makes sense with the score. Because at first I was just like, this is a very odd score, and I really don't understand why we have so many of these weird noises. And then once the aspect of the synthesizers were introduced, I was like, okay, this makes so much more sense, and now I'm more okay with it. I wouldn't say I liked the score. The score is okay-ish, in my opinion, mainly because the synthesizer stuff, it's a little distracting at times, I will say, and it feels a little unnecessary how much they use it. But anyway, it also makes sense with the story, so yeah. For the most part, the acting is fine with lesser characters. Nothing great, definitely screams super low budget film when it comes to the lesser characters. Now, the more important characters, I think, are done by better actors. Specifically, I really want to shout out John Fleck. He plays a character named Trent, and I thought his performance in particular was very inspired. I thought that he did really interesting things with the character he was given. First of all, the characters, how they're created, are a little bit awkward, a little bit weird, as is the dialogue. And that's an intentional choice, you can tell. The way this whole film is, it's just got this kind of like overall feeling and aura of just like weird and awkward. It's a little bit Lynchian. I know it's a little bit of an issue to throw that out there just because people then be like, oh, it's going to be exactly the quality of like a David Lynch film. That's not the case, but it has these aspects of this very weird, awkward, kind of surreal Lynchian type film, and I like that about it. I don't know if that was an intentional thing. I don't know if it was meant to be kind of like an homage to Lynch or not. It is timely either way, but it is interesting, and that's one of the things that really sucked me into this film and made me feel happy about just relaxing and giving into it. Even though, like I said, the story isn't like the most phenomenal story. Like the story didn't really drive me forward as much as everything else about the film, really. So yeah. But I do like that kind of awkward feel. And again, I think John Fleck, the actor John Fleck in particular, did a very nice job of kind of capturing that in his character and the way he portrayed that character. I just really enjoyed his performance. He's very magnetic when he was on screen. 20 minutes into the film is when you get your first kind of unexpected thing that happens. Up until that point, it feels very slow paced. It feels like, oh no, here we go. We're in for another one of these super slow plotting films that's not really going to go anywhere. Now, I will say there definitely are those points of the film that are overly slow. And I think overall this film is way too bloated. It definitely should have been cut down some, even though I still overall like it. It's like an hour and 41 minutes with credits, and I just think that's entirely too long for what it is. In particular, the end sequence, the final act of the film, is drawn out so much that by the time you get to the end, some of the luster is really lost, unfortunately. And it's a decent ending. I'm fine with the ending. Like, it's solid. It's just your enthusiasm for it and the impact of it loses a lot of steam because they took so long getting there. They took their time too much. Usually, especially with a film like this, I would think you would want to kind of speed things up at the end to kind of get a more satisfying ending, something that feels like it rushes at the audience a little bit faster and hits them with a little more impact with the ending, because I see what they were going for at the end, and it does work to a degree. It's just not to the degree it could have if it was paced better. But yeah, again, dialogue helps sell the awkwardness as interesting instead of off-putting, because that's one of the things where like the awkwardness of the film could just turn people off. And I mean, it still could, but it did not turn me off. It actually endeared itself to me. And I think a lot of what endeared it to me is how the dialogue's written. The way the dialogue's written, it's so weird, but it's also kind of interesting at the same time. I don't know. It's just one of those things. That's why I say it's like kind of Lynchian in a sense. It is shot pretty well. I like a lot of the camera angles. They use a lot of kind of like askew camera angles that kind of helps with that overall feeling of weirdness in the film and things just being off. So I like the choices there. That was well done. Again, bloated runtime. Again, and it's solid, but kind of like loses some stuff going on there. Ultimately, this is more of a style over substance film, but I quite like the style of it. I love the feel of it. I like the fact that they chose to put it in the 80s and make this have a good deal to do with synthesizers. Like, it just seems like such a weird choice. I was watching this movie and I'm just like trying to put myself in the headspace of the writer directors to be like, how do you come up with this concept and then work on the script and be like, yeah, this is something we can bring to film, and yeah, this is something that someone's going to give us money to bring to film. Just because from a conceptual standpoint, you're not going to see what this in product ended up being. There's a lot missing at that point. And if I would imagine that if you just read the script, a lot of people would just be like, this is terrible. Like, this isn't going to work. Like, how are you going to make this anything interesting? But they convinced them and it worked out. So yeah, I would say go ahead and make sure you check this one out. It is definitely worth it. That said, I'm not giving it like a wild rating. Being very realistic about this, out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I think it is a solid 3-star movie, close to 3.5, but with that pacing issue, got to go with a 3. Anyway, thank you so much for checking this out. Do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel to support me. If you want to pitch in monetarily a little bit, I do have 3 tiers to memberships for my channel with perks involved. There's a link in the description for that. Leave a comment. We can talk about this film, whether you liked it, hated it, in between, and we can talk spoilers in the comments. That's fine. And then thumbs up on the video to help me out with that YouTube algorithm, and you can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos. There, all of that stuff. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And until next time, keep it brutal.